Hello everyone and welcome. As you can see here, I have an array of stuff just piled on my floor. This is everything I would or might take on a backpacking trip, or several backpacking trips, as the case may be. Of course, I won't take everything here on one trip. A lot of this stuff is duplicate, so I might take some stuff on a winter trip and some stuff on a summer trip. So anyway, getting right into it, I'm just going to go from front to back over each item, or briefly touch on categories of items, and hopefully you will come away with this a little bit more educated and maybe take some of the ideas that I put into practice and use them yourself. So, getting right into it, I like to organize things in a way that makes sense to me. I'll get into this later, but it's especially important with the packs. And another thing I will show you is the data, the electronic data that how I keep track of all this stuff, how much weight I'm carrying, how many items I have, what certain items cost, just so I can look at different aspects of my system and see what needs to be improved, what could be eliminated, stuff like that. So anyway, the main items that I almost always have with me, and these kind of change, but they're mostly constant, are the everyday items. When I'm backpacking, they're almost the same as in my daily life, except certain items I'll have only when backpacking, like the whistle. The whistle is something I will carry with me around on a chain, just around my neck, and that's on me pretty much all the time. And then of course things like watches, wallets, those are givens. Most people carry watches and wallets. I like to carry an automatic watch just so that I don't have to worry about battery life. Other people may vary. These are kind of heavy. I usually will take this one. This is a Seiko SNK 803, if you want to look up the number. It's an automatic watch. It's just got a basic nylon strap, and it's got the day, the date, minute, hour, second, stuff like that. These are analog watches. I like analog. Other people may prefer digital watches. They tend to be lighter, but I like analog. I usually carry a carabiner on a belt loop, so I'll just have it clipped onto my belt loop. Sometimes I will have it clipped onto the backpack around one of the rings there, and I sometimes will clip a water bottle to it, but mainly I just have it just in case I want to use it for something. I don't know, more like an emergency thing. But and then of course I have a phone with some music on it. Last year summer I did a 55-kilometer hike. Some of you may know it. It's the Kootenai Trails, what is it, Rockwall Trail, and I had my iPhone, some earphones, and I was able to listen to music for most of the trip. I was actually surprised that my phone lasted as long as it did. It was a 4-day trip, so I was pretty impressed with that. In terms of small flashlights, oh yeah, I didn't grab the other one. I usually just carry a small flashlight like the Maritac AAA or the 4.7's Preon 2, or no, Preon 1. Or, as in this case, I have the Preon 1 head on the Maritac body, which is the smallest and most versatile combination achievable. This is a Meritac AAA copper version. It's a little bit easier to see if you drop it, but it's considerably heavier. So I don't know, it just depends where I'm going, what I'm doing. It dictates which flashlight I will take. I will quickly grab the other flashlight, which is a AA. Sorry, those were AAA flashlights. This is a AA flashlight. This is the 4.7's Quark single AA. I find it adequate for most tasks. And again, I might take this one and this one, just depending on what I'm doing. And I always take spare batteries, so those go along with me. This is a kind of a diffuser for the small AAAs. Just kind of goes on the end and turns into a little lamp. I don't usually take that. Multi-tools, sometimes I'll take these. Actually, most times I will take these, or one of them. I am a huge fan of the Victorinox brand. So I have the Victorinox Spirit X and the Victorinox Swiss tool. I much prefer to take the Swiss tool when I'm on a trip because it has more features and it's just generally a little bit more useful. But again, it depends how long the trip is and where I'm going and which other tools I'm taking along. Because some of these tools I don't always take, like the saw or something. What else? Everyday items. Sunglasses, these are pretty self-explanatory. The knives, sometimes I will take a Victorinox Swiss Army knife, like, you know, a hinged one. This one is the Huntsman. It's got pretty much the best combination of blades for its size, or best combination of tools for its size. I looked at some of the other ones and either they didn't have all of the features I wanted or they were too big. So this is a nice happy medium. I also have one of these in my survival kit. It's the exact same thing except that it has the little mini screwdriver tool. I don't even know if I'm in frame here. Anyway, the Victorinox in my survival kit has the mini driver tool in it, and it just adds a little bit more versatility to it. This one has the, what is it, Tech P7 suspension clip, I think is what they call it. So that just rides on that little split ring that they have on there. And yeah, that's the Victorinox Huntsman. It's a good multi-tool. This survival tin has quite a lot of things in it. It's got fire starting materials, it's got emergency shelter, like a bivvy, kind of like this. It's got the knife. It's got quite a few things in it, and it's fairly heavy. I think it weighs about 400 grams, close to 400 grams. And again, we'll look at the data sheet after this. But it's a survival tin. Sometimes it will come along, sometimes it won't. On really short trips, like two days, I won't take it. I won't need it. Some of the longer trips, I might take it. I don't know. It just depends. A lot of this stuff is variable. I hope you understand. Some stuff has priority and some stuff doesn't. Back to the blades. The main blades that I take are usually cold steels. This is the mini AK-47. So I will usually take 2 blades. This is the Cold Steel Voyager Large. Of course, it's oriented for lefty use, but that's a large blade. I like the Cold Steel locks. It just gives me a little bit more confidence that they won't break if I'm going to be doing, some hard wood cutting with it or even batoning. So I like to take cold steel knives. Sometimes I will take other knives, but most often it is cold steel. Other items that pretty much always go in the pack but aren't on me personally are towels. This is a pack towel, ultralight large, I think. Excellent towels. Uh, their sizes can be a little bit small, at least for me. I'm almost 6 feet tall, and the large just doesn't cover me quite adequately. So I would recommend getting the extra large and just see if you can accommodate it in your loadout. Of course, first aid kit. It's just a basic first aid kit. There's not a whole lot in there. It's just got, a couple Band-Aids, some adhesive, a little, what do you call it, finger brace. If you have a broken finger, it wraps over top and then you wrap it. You know the thing I'm talking about. And then it's got a Benchmade safety cutter or hook cutter in it. This is very useful if you want to get someone's pack off of them right away, or whatever, their clothes, their shorts, their boots. Getting boots off of a broken foot can be a huge pain in the ass. So having this handy is essential. You just hook it in the boot laces, rip down, and you can remove the boot. This can also cut boot material like leather, but it's probably not going to stay sharp for very long after that. But of course, this is a Benchmade, so if you send it into Benchmade, they will sharpen it for you for free, which is awesome. So that's the first aid kit. Also, first aid related is a bivy, a thermal bivy. Like I said, there's one somewhat similar in the emergency kit. This one is better, and usually I will take something like this. This is small and very compact and lightweight, so there's almost no reason not to take it. So I do anyway. More emergency related things are GPS or locators. This is the Spot 1.0, I think. It's a pretty basic unit, and it takes quite a while for it to receive a signal and send a signal, but it's very easy to use. You press power, you wait till it has located the satellites for its signal, and then you can send messages, or if in an actual emergency, you can call for emergency responders. It recommends you always use lithium-ion batteries, I think. Yeah, lithium batteries only. That's because alkaline batteries tend to, they can rupture and they can corrode the inside of this. So lithium batteries don't do that as often. So they recommend lithium batteries only. I follow that, even though lithium batteries are terribly expensive. This thing always uses lithium batteries. I try to coordinate my electronic items so that the power cells they use are mostly the same. So, with AAA batteries in my flashlights, I have 3 AAA batteries in this thing, and I have 2 AAA batteries in my headlamp. And if one device craps out, or the batteries go dead or whatever, I can take batteries from another device and use them in the one that died. So it's kind of flexible that way. It does take a little bit more diligence in making sure that the batteries are mostly full. If they're half full and you need them in an emergency, they may run out on you quicker than you had anticipated, and that's never a good thing. Other GPS units are just basic handheld units. I think this one is the one I use. It's got lithium batteries too. This one is just an older unit. I don't really use it. These are the eTrex Ventures by Garmin. Very, very basic. More emergency stuff. This is a flare pen, a true flare pen with flare capsules. I think these are actually the noise making ones, the bear bangers they call them. There are flare cartridges, and there's 3 different types of cartridges. I can't remember what the third one is, but these are the loud ones. Very loud, louder than a gun, probably. I haven't tested them, but apparently they are very, very loud. I also, sometimes this stuff goes along on a hunting trip, and so I have trail markers. If I go out on a trail, or like, trail blazing, I'll mark my way with these. I haven't really used very many, and of course your goal is to try and find your way back, so hopefully when I do use them I get them back on my way out. So that's just emergency stuff. I don't know, it usually doesn't go along. Hand warmers, foot warmers, I don't really take them that often, but in winter I definitely like to have them. Some other stuff, signaling and whatnot. Mirror. This is a Coghlan, whatever you call it, mirror with the aiming thing in the middle. It's essential for signaling. This is a compass, very lightweight. It's a Silva Guide, something or other. It costs like $20. That always goes with me. This, some of you nut and fancy fans may recognize it. It's a Doctor monocular. This thing's pretty sweet. It's kind of more of a novelty than anything, but it's super tiny and compact, and it works well. It kind of takes a little bit of getting used to the small nature of it, but it is neat, and I was able to enjoy some wildlife on one trip in particular. I think it was a moose, and I couldn't really see it that well. He was out in the lake, and I wanted to have a better look at him, so I pulled out my Doctor and was able to see him better. It was kind of cool. What do I want to cover next? I guess continuing with navigation. Area maps are essential. I have a few here on some of the places I've been. Banff, Bragg Creek, the rock wall. This is an awesome trip, by the way. If even people in the States, if you have a chance to come to Alberta and do a backpacking trip, do the rock wall. It is amazing. In some areas, the trail is known for the rock wall, which extends about 1 kilometer above the hiking trail. When you're walking past, it's one of the best sights I've ever seen on a backpacking trip. Jasper, Kananaskis. I love Kananaskis lakes. They're probably my favorite, just to go out for a day trip or a weekend and just get pissed drunk. And some of these are just kind of general maps. They're not for a specific area, but I usually take a map. I'm going to stop the video there and continue with another section. I'm going to make sure that I'm in frame first as well, and then we'll get into some of the food items and this stuff over here. Alright, continuing on. I'm actually not gonna get into the food quite yet. I'm gonna keep going with kind of more tool-y things because we were already there anyway, so I'll just keep going. One thing I forgot to mention was with the first aid kit, I have a lot of extra things just in case I run out. I've got tons of band-aids in there and moleskin, which I find pretty much essential on any trip. Sometimes I'll have duct tape in there too. It just depends. You'll hear me say that a lot more in the future. It just depends. That's just the way I am with my stuff. I have like 4 different pots that I might take on any given trip, so just to warn you. What else? Yeah, first aid. Some other stuff is like repair kits for certain things. This is a repair kit for a therm-a-rest mattress, inflatable mattress. So there's a couple patches in there. Sometimes I'll take that. I mean, it's like a piece of paper basically. So again, there's no real reason not to take something like that, especially when you rely on the mattress to put you to sleep. So I like to keep those kind of things in mind. Other things, straps, ropes, bags, elastics. These are just bread bags. I have about 4 or 5 of them in there. And these are handy for if there's some really wet, sloshy trail, like if it's snowy, but you can't quite use your snowshoes. Your stuff is going to get wet. Your socks are going to get wet. Your boots are going to get wet. So if you don't have something to protect your socks or your feet, you're going to have a bad day. So that's what these are for. Other things, just random straps that I don't really know. I think this came from a backpack we'll get into later. This also came from a backpack, the orange Black Diamond Infinity. I just keep these straps separate just in case. I find straps very useful for very different things, especially for large sleeping bags. I like to have straps. This is a big strap for, I think I was intending to use it for a sleeping bag or a sleeping mattress. Since I have this tiny little sleeping mattress, the air mattress though, I don't really use those. I used to have the big closed cell foam types, and those required straps / ropes, and I always found those a pain in the ass. So I kind of got away with that, or got away from that, and invested in a proper backpacking air mattress. Rope is a given. It's, who doesn't know of paracord by now? This other rope I made in Scouts. Well, I didn't make the rope. We just kind of learned basic knot tying and a technique for tying the ends of rope with thread. It's called whipping. You've probably heard of it, maybe not, I don't know. Who cares? More tools, knives. This is a medium-sized knife, the ever so popular SOG Northwest Ranger. I don't like the case in it. It's kind of a shitty case. It's like a cheap leather case, but the knife itself is good. It's got some wear on it, some rust. Man, I forgot to clean it. Whoopsies. It's a good knife. I have no complaints. I sometimes will take WD-40 if I have to process my own wood, which I do with the Ontario Artac 2. I love this knife. As you can see, there's quite a bit of wear on it. Yeah, I've whacked the shit out of some stumps. with this. It's fun. Not exactly easy though, and kind of dangerous. If you don't have good gloves when you're working with this, it is very dangerous, and I would not recommend it. Luckily, I have not cut myself seriously so far, but it can easily happen. So, always keep that in mind. Another thing I keep with the knife is a whetstone. This is just a small Falniven DC4 whetstone. It's tiny, it's very thin, and it comes in this really nice case. It's a little hard to sharpen a really large knife with a small whetstone, so this is mainly for emergencies. I always sharpen it when I get back from a trip, and I hope that the level of sharpness is good enough for the next trip and it won't dull too quickly. Another thing is the saw-viver. Sadly, they do not make this anymore. However, they do make the Sven knife, or not knife, Sven saw. And it's a triangular design instead of this rectangular design. But a friend of mine has the Sven, and I use this, and I think this one is a little bit better. It's a little easier to manipulate, and it seems a little sturdier, but I could be wrong. I don't know. This is good. The saw-viver, it's lightweight, and it works extremely well. That's kind of it for tools, other than this is just a cheap Coughlin's pack trowel. Some locations I go to, you have to dig your own latrine, so yeah, that's kind of necessary. Just thinking what I can do next. I don't really want to do these because it's part of cooking, but I guess I can get into that. Oh, fire starting. Right, I'm just going to quickly talk about this because there's 5 items I take usually for fire starting. A mini lighter, not usually a full-size lighter, but a mini Bic lighter. Flint and steel. And this is a small flint and steel made by Exotac. I think they were bought out by someone else though. But they make all sorts of aluminum / titanium fire starting gear. And they're cool, but they're expensive. This thing costs like $20 some, and it's just a tiny little flint and steel. So you gotta gauge that for yourself. I thought it would be cool, but I kind of regret buying it now. They also make a good match, whatever you call it, match can. Waterproof, of course. It's got O-rings. It's got a striker on the inside. This one, you're supposed to put the striker on the outside, and it's like sandpaper material. But in my mind, if that gets wet, you're screwed. So I stick the striker material inside the tube and just make sure that the sandpaper is not touching the end of a matchstick, because if it strikes and inside the sealed container, it's gonna blow up on you, just like Nut and Fancy said. So anyway, I keep a few spare boxes just in case. Usually they don't go with me though, because the boxes, if they get wet, they're useless. So there you go. I usually keep the fire starting stuff in here in this waterproof container. This is a Pelican 110 mini case, or micro case. Waterproof. It's got a pressure seal in it. I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know how to think of this yet. It is a good idea for things like batteries. Oh yeah, I do put batteries in there too. Because if any of that gets wet, they're useless. So, I don't know. This can be a good thing, especially if you're on canoeing trip or kayaking trip or something, these are necessary. As well as the bags too. They have to be waterproof. But this thing, on most of the trips I've been on, they're dry, so I don't usually need it. A few kind of oddball items that I take along are things like cards, playing cards. This is specifically the Maxpedition Tactical All-Weather Field Deck. They abbreviate it to TOF. They're kind of these high-grade cardboard, plastic kind of cards, and they're excellent. They are waterproof. They don't break. I did buy a plastic deck of playing cards once, and I thought they'd be cool and waterproof and stuff. But the problem with those was if they break, or if they get cold, they break. And that's no fun. So these are much better. I'm not sure what they're made of. I'm pretty sure they're made of plastic, but if you get a deck of playing cards, you could just buy cheap playing cards, and if they get wet, who cares? Throw them out. But I'd rather just have playing cards that I can take on one trip and, reuse them. Those are expensive too, by the way. Deodorant, well, that later. One thing, a friend of mine took on some trips, and it kind of didn't make sense to me at the time, but once I did it myself, it made a lot of sense, is taking some sort of ball. This is just a tennis ball. And I have this in my pack, usually in that cup, and when I get to camp, I just set it on the ground and roll my feet on it, barefoot usually. And it just relieves some of the stress from walking for 12, 15, 20 kilometers in one day. It's nice. It's a nice little comfort. Okay. We've got most of that stuff out of the way. We will get into the food, and the reason why I kind of held off with some of this stuff is because it is important to note when dealing with food and anything with a fragrance to it or some sort of smell. Animals love that. Bears, squirrels, beavers, Canadian thing to say, isn't it? Beavers, porcupines, any animal that crawls around near the campsite, if they smell this stuff, they will want to get at it. If it's in your tent, they will go through your tent to get at it. I've heard of stories like this in Scouts. Never seen it happen personally, luckily, but I've been around camps where they've been like, they're in a panic because they left deodorant in their tent, and a squirrel chewed through the corner of their tent and the corner of their sleeping bag and ate their deodorant. Actually, on the Rockwell Trail, one guy, we were deep into the trail. Like, we were probably just about halfway, or maybe more than halfway, which is 26 kilometers. In the middle of nowhere. I mean, we were in the bottom of a very steep valley. Go back, you had to hike up, a kilometer. Go forward, you had to hike several kilometers out and up. It was nasty. And he didn't have tape. So luckily I had duct tape and, I'll get to it later, but tenacious tape. Good product, by the way. And he was able to patch his tent up and continue on the hike. I kind of felt bad for him, but it was kind of a good lesson for him, I think. Bring tape. Tenacious tape, duct tape, Gorilla tape. Hang on.